I'm willing to take full responsibility for the horrible events of the last 24 hours, but you must understand. Our interest in their world was purely for the betterment of mankind. Everything has clearly gotten out of hand now, yes. But it was worth the risk, I assure you.
I'm wondering if there's going to be a bit of a lull in gaming after this for me.
Everyone's going to be kind of mourning the loss of this one.
I was so anticipating this game beyond anything else for a while, just because Doom is such a personal thing for me in terms of my personal history of gaming. Doom was up there with Sonic the Hedgehog and Mario as like one of the very early impactful games that got my attention. Mm-hmm. And so the excitement for this one was through the roof. And now that it's here, and now that we're both having played it, mm-hmm. I don't know what else is going to be that exciting for quite a while.
It had a weird lead up in that reviewers didn't get like early copies of the game, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then as soon as it came out, just everybody kind of went radio silent, but for a quick, this game is amazing, and then they all just played it, you know.
Yeah, Twitter feeds all over the place, mm-hmm. repeating just quick like it's good, mm-hmm. this is good. Like before the reviews are out, because the reviews just came out a couple days ago, which was like a couple days after the game release, and across the board, I think there was already a general sentiment of like positivity mm-hmm. around at least the single player campaign. And that was at odds a little bit of what was leading up to it. Because I felt, I don't know, maybe I was just looking for it a bit much. But I felt that there was quite a bit of negativity prior to the release. Mm-hmm. Maybe some of that is just expectation.
Right. Well, even the multiplayer, even now, doesn't seem to be catching a lot of good attention.
Yeah. It's getting like mediocre reactions, mm-hmm. I think. And some of that is not so much because the multiplayer is horrendous. I think it's unfair to say that it's like this terrible multiplayer game. I think it works fine in multiplayer and it's perfectly sufficient. But I think the single player ended up being so tight in its mechanics and so tight in terms of like its place in the world as a game, right? Mm-hmm. That the multiplayer feels almost redundant and kind of like the multiplayer is too similar to certain things and also not similar enough to certain other more classic styles of gameplay, mm-hmm. that the single player just sort of knocked it out of the park. Right. And so in that comparison, I think that's why the multiplayer kind of gets a bad rap and way less attention mm-hmm. in that regard. You and I have fairly different histories with Doom. Mm-hmm. Right, we're coming at this kind of in a different angle. You're much younger than I. Mm-hmm. Your excitement is probably not anywhere near as excited as I was.
So emotionally, yes.
Yeah. So what did you think? Why don't you tell me like you just finished it like literally hours ago, probably.
Yeah.
Right?
It's odd because I really found the original game kind of boring. Just because sensibilities have changed, I think. I respect like the craft of it, and I think it's like a kind of a brilliant game. Like I think anyone should be able to acknowledge that the original Doom is still an ingenious game to this day. Mm-hmm. But the experience of it seemed fell flat to me. But now that I've played this game, the mechanics of this game are not only so polished, but so they do such a good job of translating the concept of the original Doom that I think now is the perfect time for me to go back and play the original Doom.
Yeah.
Like this game celebrates the original while just enhancing it and making it modern in some of the most like just well-crafted, fine-tuned ways.
Mm-hmm. And it does pull off a lot of what the original was aiming for. Mm-hmm. And it does it to a much bigger degree, right? Mm-hmm. So like the levels wrap in on themselves much like the original, but they're actually so big and so vertical in ways that the original wasn't, that it's actually like a huge leap forward in that regard, right? But in terms of how it feels, like when I'm playing this new Doom, it actually feels like how I remember the original Doom. Mm-hmm. Even though I know rationally that the original Doom is actually quite simple in comparison. Mm-hmm. And so that's interesting to me that for you on your end, like the original Doom maybe doesn't hold up in terms of like keeping your attention in the way modern games do, right? Because it doesn't have a lot of the polish and some of the refinements that came later in shooters. Whereas on my end, when I play the original Doom, I get excited all over again, right? And so it's nice to have a game like this come in where they can pull off, they can make something new and fresh and exciting while still maintaining a lot of the core values that I think the original Doom had. And those are values that are now a novelty because a lot of other shooters do not have that. A lot of other shooters are fairly linear. This game is far from linear, right? Well, how did you feel about that level? Because you're playing a lot of modern shooters which are fairly straightforward, and this one was not. So how did that feel?
Well, I've gotten to the point now where I hate collectibles in games because while I do have a completionist streak, I also feel like level design has gotten pretty lazy and that collectibles aren't very interesting. In this game, though, like the weapon upgrades and the suit upgrades and the collectibles that you can find throughout the level are so fascinatingly like placed, and they introduce you to just like the geography of the land, and they even prepare you for fights in some ways because they'll give you little shortcuts and things. It's just like I wrung every level dry, or at least I tried to on my first try, you know. And I even went back and I replayed some levels because I wanted to see everything that there was, you know. Because like the level design, much like I was even able to appreciate about the original one, is just top notch. And just like, and even the arenas, the fact that like the gameplay is so, it has that like signature Doom speed, and they also have added, to compensate for the fact that this game is much more vertical than Doom, they've also given you like these awesome double jump abilities and ledge grabs that allow you to just like flip around the level and like dodge enemies and like look for pickups frantically. Like it's a beautiful, fast-paced, like flying experience as you're killing everybody. It's amazing. Yeah,
and it's all about it's like maintaining forward momentum the entire time. And interestingly enough, like ironically almost, the glory kills, which look, when you watch videos prior to the game's release, it looks like glory kills are something that would actually slow down the pace of the game because you're literally stopping to hurt someone. But they also maintain the same momentum that moving around the environment has, right? Because the reason you want to do a glory kill is because it gives you health, or if you level up, it also gives you armor pickups. And that will actually keep you alive. So when things get super stressful, instead of stopping everything and starting to look for health packs, you just go in for a glory kill and you get your health back and you keep going. So it actually maintains the momentum. So it's like they have this idea in their head and the design of this game to consistently keep the player going. And you know, you were talking about the collectibles. Like, I think usually collectibles are done really bad, right? Because they're just on the side and they feel sort of like an afterthought. And it becomes something compulsory that you just do because you feel like you should do it, but you don't necessarily want to. Whereas in Doom, the world is so interesting, and the movement through the world, traversal itself, is in itself enjoyable, almost like a platformer. That it becomes really intriguing to try and figure out, like, how the heck do I get here? Because you can see it on your auto map. Okay, there's an item right in this corner. But the act of figuring that out becomes itself almost a little platform puzzle. And usually platformers don't work very well in first-person shooters. But in this one, much like maybe the Metroid Prime or something, they find a way to get the platforming just right, where your jumping is just floaty enough without feeling floaty. And it's, you know, your leap is high enough and the double jump compensates well enough, right? That it actually feels like, okay, I want to go through every nook and cranny. And then the world is just beautiful across the board. Speaking of how beautiful the environments are, I think a lot of that actually is a testament to the engine of the game. Right? Like, we play a lot of PC games. We're always playing PC games. And sometimes we have to deal with the early launch troubles of just things not running particularly well. And frame rate hiccups and just, a whole range of glitches and problems. And this one was pretty well put together from the start, right? And then it just kept improving with new drivers and things. And the game is just absolutely beautiful. Right? Like, beautiful at 60 frames per second, or way more in our case, right?
Like the game, the game started off like looking really amazing, and then just like as the week went by, some more drivers came out, and now I'm playing the game on ultra at more than 60 frames per second, and it's just like such a fluid experience, which is perfect because that's exactly what this game needs. Like everything is so vivid, and you need all that detail to keep track of where the enemies are.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't feel like there are any sacrifices. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, we play in Ultra and we're getting, like, in our case, it's like over 100 frames, right? Mm-hmm. And the texture quality is fantastic, but there's also a ton of particle effects all over the place. Like, when the imp enemies start throwing fireballs at you, it's not just like a puny little fireball. There's sparks popping out of it. Mm-hmm. And when you go through, when you see those gore nests, there's all these little particles floating in the air, like in a circular motion. It's like they really are pushing the graphics as much as possible. And the use of fog and smoke and color, right? Like the hues, like the green hues and the blue hues that they throw in throughout the world. It gives like this sci-fi alien element, and they still maintain a high frame rate. The combat is fast, and all of these details don't take away from your ability to just look at the environment quickly, assess the situation, deal with the combat, and move on, right? Mm-hmm. And somehow like the game doesn't overstay its welcome, mm-hmm. as well. You just finished it, right? And I when I asked you like what your thoughts were, you did mention to me like it ended at just the right time.
Yeah, it kind of what would you call it? It kind of like throttles itself at the very end, where it sort of speeds up and it gives you like some boss battles, which throughout the game there actually aren't very many of. Mm-hmm. And it builds to like a climax in a way that games tend not to, in the sense that a lot of games they're sort of fractals. They sort of repeat themselves over and over. Yeah. Whereas this one, like the structure of the levels like changes towards the end, and it makes you understand like where you are in the timeline.
Yeah, it gets really intense, mm-hmm. at the end. Actually, we're not spoiling anything. There is a story here, but we're gonna avoid talking about that. But the ending just sort of it gives you like a series of really intense battles that are fairly long. And it's kind of overwhelming in terms of like you're going battle to battle to battle to battle, right? Mm-hmm. So that by the time you're done, it's actually kind of a relief to be done. And I find it fascinating that they're able to have the game start off so intense, because it's really intense throughout the whole game, and yet they still find a way to up that intensity, mm-hmm. to the point of almost overdoing it, but then they stop, right? Like, right. Really, if the game kept going too long after that, I think I actually would have gotten tired of it. Mm-hmm. But they made it so that you're right when I'm thinking, okay, it's finally about to overstay its welcome, that's when the game ties it all up and the credits start rolling. And then I want more, and I've been wanting to play more of this game like ever since finishing it, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah, like you've been kind of going through the snap map stuff.
Yeah, I've done a bit of snap map. I know you haven't messed around with snap map much at all yet. We should talk a little bit. We finished talking about the single player, but I think we should mention some of the other modes. One of the things that's a bit strange is that each mode in this game feels particularly segmented off. Yeah. Not just in terms of it's in a separate section on the game menu, but it feels like a totally different development mindset.
Yeah, right? It like literally starts another executable or something. Right?
Yeah, when you at least on the PC, I'm sure it's something similar on console, but like when you hit, for example, when you start up the game, it defaults to campaign mode, but when you hit snap map or multiplayer, the game will exit to the desktop and then restart in snap map or multiplayer, right? Like it's like a whole separate application, which is a little odd and kind of in the way, right? But that continues in terms of how the application actually feels. Like in snap map, you don't have access to the weapon wheel, which is super weird. Because the weapon wheel is so integral to combat, just switching your weapons quickly and jumping from weapon to weapon based on the situation. In Snap Map, you're limited to 2 weapons, right?
Okay. Do you sometimes start with those weapons?
You could start with whatever weapons the Snap Map creator decides that you have, but you only have 2 at a time. Yeah. And there is a way to give you more than 2, but it's really it's a bit convoluted.
It's like a backdoor kind of.
Yeah, like you have to mess with the logic in the game. But even then, you don't have access to weapon wheel. You can get more than 2 weapons, but you're scrolling through them one at a time. which is not conducive to fast gameplay. It's an odd decision.
Yeah.
And then even some of the weapons are weapons that you don't see in single player. The movement is not guaranteed. You're not guaranteed to always have a double jump. You don't have a lot of the same upgrades for weapons that you have in single player. You have some of them, right? Like you can get like the little grenade launcher for the shotgun and like the detonation for the rocket launcher and things like that. But you can't get like the turret thing for the chain
chain gun.
Yeah, the chain gun isn't available. The chainsaw isn't available. Like it's weird the things that are not in the snap map that are in the single player, and vice versa. It's like they sort of like there's a slight bit of miscommunication going on.
Yeah. They seem very segmented.
Yeah, and also the actual levels that are being created, some of them are okay. There hasn't been like a really great level yet. But you know, I actually don't want to comment too much because it does feel really early. Maybe we'll do a separate video on Snap Map down the line. I'm still kind of waiting for like the really big revelation type level, like where someone comes in and really uses the tools in a way that's totally mind blowing and like really pushes it. Because so far people have been making very similar looking levels and similar plane, like the similar structure. You're sort of just going through. You do a little arena. And you continue, find a key, maybe do another arena, and then it's over, right? Which is the Doom way, but it's not labyrinthian in the way that the single player is, right? Which is kind of disappointing. And some of that might be the tools that are available. I know that players are limited in terms of what rooms they can put down, and then they're limited in terms of how much they can augment those rooms, and so that kind of makes things look a little samey sometimes. And we briefly touched on the multiplayer, but I'll just say the multiplayer is sufficient, right? It's fun in small doses, but I haven't actually been motivated to play that much of the multiplayer. Right. I've been more motivated just to go back and play the single player. Like I'm going back right now and I'm playing Nightmare difficulty. You and I both completed on Ultraviolence, which I will say you agree, right? The Ultraviolence is kind of like the perfect difficulty.
Yeah, I mean, like I was getting a little kind of bored with it on the normal difficulty. I think it's kind of tuned for just kind of just a casual player. But like, if you really want to get into just the strengths of this game, which are like the speed at which you're moving, the fact that you don't reload, so you always have a chance to shoot. Like just there's a level of strength that the demons need to have in order to even deal with how powerful you are, and Ultraviolence gives you that strength.
Yeah, and Ultraviolence forces you to pay attention to all of your options, right? Like you're suddenly thinking like, oh, I need to know where that health pack is in the middle of this fight. I need to know when to do glory kills. I need to take advantage of all of the mechanics that I have available, right, in order to survive. And that's really fantastic. And so far, I'm not far playing a Nightmare, but it is enjoyable, although it is damn hard. And overall, the game is fantastic, right? You agree? Game is fantastic.
Yeah.
I look forward to what id Software does next. I hope they maybe dabble with some Quake, maybe do like similar to Wolfenstein Old Blood, maybe release another little mini campaign for Doom or something. The more single player, the better. I hope the snap map expands a lot. I really want to see more from that because I just want more Doom. I'm enjoying the crap out of Doom.
Yeah, more Doom, more of anything that they can do that's remotely similar to this format. They really seem to have found their stride, and I'll definitely go back to playing it soon.
Yeah, and I'm really glad it didn't suck. It could have sucked.
Yeah, it could have.
All right, well, thanks for listening.
Thank you.
See you guys.